Hello everyone and welcome to the Transit Nomad family. Western Europe versus Eastern Europe. What's the difference? Before we get started discussing this, I'd like to let you know that I'm currently in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I'm here for a couple of weeks, and at the end of this trip I'll be recording my final verdict video, comparing Sofia and Bulgaria with other cities and countries to help you decide if you should visit, while also saving you lots of time and money with practical tips on how to get the most out of your trip. This will be an exclusive video, but you can easily gain access to it by subscribing or donating any amount on buymeacoffee.com/transitnomad, or through the link in the video description below. With that being said, let's begin walking around Sofia, Bulgaria, and discussing the main differences between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. In case you don't know, I just came here from Belgium. I was staying in Belgium for a couple of weeks, and before that I was staying in London for a couple of weeks, and before that I traveled to lots of other Western and Eastern European countries. I've been traveling for many years, exploring different places, and this gives me enough information to share the insights and let you know what it's like. I do want to let you know that it's kind of from a traveler's perspective. I'm not going to get too deep in terms of living in Western Europe or Eastern Europe long term. I'm just going to talk about traveling, and also long-term traveling. It doesn't have to be like a few days, it can be a few weeks, it can be a couple of months, but that's going to be my perspective as a traveler, as someone who likes to explore different places and experience the vibes, and also feeling comfortable and having fun, and also keeping it budget friendly. And that brings me to the first point, is the cost. Almost everything is much cheaper in Eastern Europe. That applies to the accommodations, transportation, entertainment, and everything and anything in between. Eastern Europe is going to give you a much better value for the price. No matter what country we are talking about, it's just a general rule. Eastern Europe is going to be less expensive, and that is a very major difference, I think, and it's going to be very substantial, not just a little bit, not a few euros, but we are talking about half price, sometimes 50%, sometimes even 3 times as much that you would be saving if you are staying in Eastern Europe. Number two, I would like to mention is that in Eastern Europe you are going to get better housing, better accommodations, because everything is less expensive. You're going to get a better apartment. It's more likely to have air conditioning, and it's more likely to give you more space, maybe some kind of a little outdoor balcony or patio or things like that. And it's going to be a better experience with more amenities overall. If you want to get this kind of stuff in Western Europe, like in London for example, you have to pay insane amount of money, and still, because it's so competitive, every little inch or centimeter of space in London is so valuable. It's going to be more challenging to have a really comfortable environment for staying and for living, because it's going to be so small and so old, and chances are you won't have air conditioning. They don't even have decent air conditioning on their buses, so if it's a hot day, it's not going to be as comfortable. But in Sofia it's more likely that you're going to have very cozy environment and very good apartment or better hotel, and it's still going to cost less. The next thing I'd like to mention is the cost. No, not the cost, the cleanliness. I'm sorry, I already mentioned the cost. It does look a little bit cleaner in Eastern Europe than in Western Europe. If you look at the streets we are walking around right now, there is less trash, and everything seems a little bit more organized. I don't see as many strange characters asking for money, or in general like weird looking people looking at you in a strange way. I saw that more of that kind of stuff in Western Europe, also mentally sick people, but not as much in Eastern Europe. I'm not sure what the reason is, but everyone is more normal here. They just look like they mind their own business. and people are dressed a little bit cleaner, and also the streets look a little bit cleaner, a little bit less garbage, and I certainly enjoy that part a lot. Of course, there are a lot of exceptions. You're gonna find dirty areas in Eastern Europe, and you're gonna find clean areas in Western Europe. I'm just kind of generalizing it and sharing what I noticed over the years. The next thing I'd like to mention is the architecture. You're gonna find lots of beautiful architecture in both Western and Eastern Europe. But in Eastern Europe, you're going to get a little bit more of a blend of Soviet style architecture or communist style architecture that was built in the 20th century, and still the older architecture and the modern architecture. You're gonna get a mix of these different styles. Whereas in Western Europe, because it was not under Soviet government or Soviet influence, you're not gonna find as much communist inspired architecture. And I don't know, I don't think that communist inspired architecture is very beautiful anyway, although during the Stalin era they had some pretty good looking buildings built, but it's not something that I would generally really miss. So in terms of architecture, maybe Western Europe wins a little bit because they have a little bit more of those beautiful older buildings, but still you're gonna find a lot of them in Eastern Europe, and you're gonna find beautiful squares, beautiful churches, theaters, museums, and all kinds of really nice looking buildings. So you can still find that in any part of Europe. It also depends on what's been destroyed during the wars, because there were a lot of wars taking place throughout the 20th century, and also still taking place today. And these wars, they do destroy buildings, and restoring them, it costs a lot of money. And Western Europe generally has more funds for this kind of stuff than Eastern Europe, because Eastern Europe was affected by the communism, and that slowed down the growth and entrepreneurship, and because of that, it's not as wealthy as Western Europe. I'm gonna make another video about that on my channel, so stay tuned for that. The next thing I'd like to mention is the immigration. Immigration in Western Europe is very common. You're gonna see a lot of people from many different kinds of countries, a lot of different countries all over the world, and you're gonna hear all kinds of languages, and it's gonna be like a melting pot, a little bit similar to the United States, maybe even more so, because sometimes when you are hanging out in Germany, you have a hard time finding Germans. Actually, I've had those experiences depending on which neighborhood you go to. In Eastern Europe, you are definitely going to see a lot more local people and local population and local vibes. Definitely, it's not going to be as diverse, and it's something that if you are looking for more like a local experience, definitely Eastern Europe is going to win in this category. And the next category I'd like to mention is tourism. In Western Europe, you see tourists from all over the world as well. It's very, very popular as a destination. People from many different countries and continents, they want to visit Western Europe. Everybody wants to see Paris or London or Milan and Venice and all that stuff. And you're gonna see like these huge crowds of hundreds or thousands of people, almost like an army marching to see this place and that place and taking pictures. And you have to compete for that space, and you have to share that space with everybody else. And it's a little bit, it gets a little bit tiring to always have to be so competitive and share all that space. So if you want to have a little bit more space to yourself and a little bit more peaceful environment and not have to share it with so many tourists, I think it might be a good idea for you to consider traveling to Eastern Europe instead, because you're gonna have a lot more space. Like this, we are walking around some popular streets and landmarks, and you still see a lot of people. It's still popular, but it's not as crowded like it is in Paris, where you have like traffic, heavy traffic in a lot of different parts of town. Sometimes there's not even that much to look at. Like the area around the Eiffel Tower, there's almost nothing to see around it except for the tower itself, and you see these thousands of people walking around everywhere. It takes sometimes 5 or 10 minutes just to cross the street because you have to share your space with everybody else. The next thing I'd like to mention is public transportation. Actually, it is kind of an, how should I say it? It's open to discussion. It's a controversial point, I think, because some people might say that Western Europe is better, others might say that Eastern Europe is better. But I feel that in Eastern Europe, I see a lot more trams, a lot more buses, a lot more transit options, also trolley buses and metro, underground systems. And it's a lot more affordable and the frequencies are smaller. I see in Western Europe a lot of bus lines, they go every 10 or 15 minutes. Whereas here I see frequencies more like 5 to 10 minutes. It depends on the line, depends on the time, it depends on the route. But generally speaking, I feel that wait times for transit are a little bit shorter in Eastern Europe than in Western Europe. And this is not just based on Sofia, Bulgaria. This is also based on my extended stays in Bucharest, Hungary. Budapest, Hungary. Bucharest, I'm gonna go there next after this trip. But also I stayed in many Polish cities, Warsaw, Krakow. Also I stayed in Prague, Czech Republic. That is more like Central Europe. But also originally I'm from Ukraine. So it depends on which country we are talking about. Every city is different. But I do see a lot of people using public transportation, and I see the frequencies reflecting that a little bit better and more in Eastern Europe than in Western Europe. The next thing I'd like to mention is that in Eastern Europe, I see less people cycling and riding bicycles. And for people who like to ride bicycles, that might be a little bit sad because the infrastructure is not as extensive for riding a bicycle. Like where I came from right now in Belgium, they have bridges for bicycles, they have lanes, they have lights, they have dedicated space, and people are taught to respect their private space for bicycles and not get in their way. And actually, if you're a pedestrian and you come from the United States, it does take some getting used to, and you might find the bicycles being a little bit annoying, like going so fast past you and being upset if you are getting a little bit in their lane. Sometimes the separation is not so obvious, but it also is a good thing for people who want to ride bicycles to work or for leisure purposes, because it is a very environmentally friendly way of getting around. It's also very healthy and very convenient, and I would say it's comfortable too. I love riding my bike. It just takes some getting used to. If you are a pedestrian, and most people who are tourists, they are going to be pedestrians most of the time, especially if they're visiting for like a few days or a week or two. So you might find Eastern Europe a little bit more comfortable in this department because you don't have to share your space with bicycles. It's only pedestrians and public transportation and cars. And the next point I'd like to mention is kind of the obvious one, but maybe some people wouldn't think of that, but the food is also different. There is a lot more, let's pass this cafe because there is a lot of background music going on here. But generally speaking, the food is, the variety is a little bit different in Eastern Europe versus Western Europe. Every country in Europe has its own history, its own culture, and its own cuisine. And if you go to a little in Germany, the things that are sold over there is going to be different from what is sold at Lidl in Belgium, or in where I am in Sofia, Bulgaria. The things are completely different. Some of them are the same, but some of them are different. So generally speaking, my channel is not about cuisine that much, but you're gonna find a lot of different variety of things, a lot of different meals, salads, dishes that you might not find in Western Europe. You can find it in Eastern Europe, and also it's going to be a little bit less expensive. And maybe if I have to generalize it, I would say Eastern Europe offers more vegetables and vegetable-based dishes, whereas Western Europe is focused a little bit more on carbs. I might be wrong, my channel is not about food, but that is just what I noticed for myself when I'm looking at menus or when I'm hanging out at local supermarkets. With that being said, I would like to let you know that as an active traveler and business owner with experience, I might be able to assist you with trip planning, life coaching, and business consulting, with all the details available at buymeacoffee.com/transitnomad or through the link in the video description below. This is where you can also find lots of exclusive content on many different cities around the world, my secret tips, PDF guides, and the option to request a custom video on any topic that matters to you. Thank you everyone for watching, commenting, liking, and subscribing. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.